System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city love.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Friday, May 29th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Little Tanky Summer. Amoja, hello. Happy Friday. How are you doing? How has your week been? What's the word on the street?
You know what I'm saying? Like, you be watching your life. I know we're going to get into it later, but I was recently just, on X, going through the knowledge and just, running across the Medvedev tweets, bro. It's like, this motherfucker tweets like a YN, bro. Dead ass, bro.
Wow.
So, I just been kind of like just dying laughing, man. This motherfucker out here tweeting like he O-Dog and shit, man. Can't be good.
Wow. Yes. Let's get into it, shall we? I have a couple things, even a little bit of Medvedev for you. I'm going to throw some things at you, and then we can go from there. What do you think?
Let's get it, man. Oh, God.
Everyone knows her.
Oh, God. Kaya motherfucking Callis.
Estonia's best. And let's just listen to, this was, I think, a little bit earlier. And, of course, as we know, Europe is going to have to take a big step into supporting Ukraine, which we'll get into is kind of hilarious. But let's just take a listen to our favorite Estonian, Kaya Kallas.
The Ukraine's ask has been also about, if you look at their ask, then it is about actually also being, thumb on a scale on their side, because, all the concessions so far have been on Ukrainian side, but there should be also concessions on the Russian side, meaning that we should also help them in these negotiations, but we can't be mediators, really, because we are defending the interests of Europe and the interests of Ukraine, because Ukraine is also in Europe. So that's why, whether it's a ceasefire, whether it's, any other issue that I discussed before, then we can't be mediators, we can't be neutral, treating them equally, because we have been clearly on Ukraine's side.
So, that's the most honest shit she's ever said in her life. We can't be neutral.
It's the quiet part out loud. And I think that, again, it just goes to the point of you're just a puppet. You can't do anything. And it's so hilarious to me that she said, well, Ukraine's had to make concessions. Well, Russia should have to make concessions, too.
They didn't make concessions. They got fucking annihilated on the battlefield. That's not a concession. It's not like, we agree. We're going to go ahead.
It's an admit of defeat, in its own way.
I still don't admit it, though. You get what I'm saying? They still lying. They still out there, writing essays about how they can still win all this land back. You know what I'm saying? Look, they're in a place of desperation. And all this shit is connected, right? this goes back to when we talked about how Europe is the lost. And when you hear this kind of language, what it tells me is someone put a battery in your back and you out there doing all the moves. Because this isn't even moving from a geopolitical point of view. Geopolitical points of view means that you're thinking about the interests first of your entity. Right. She's sent to be a representation of the EU. So the first thing that an organization like the EU should want to do is first and foremost continue to exist. This is not hyperbolic. This is what the United States is always doing. The United States always ensures first and foremost, will this help us exist? Right. And if the answer is no, they try to find a way where they can make that answer yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, BRICS. Is this going to help us continue to exist? No. Okay, let's fucking destroy BRICS, right? Like, that's the Americans. That's, whether you agree with it or not, that is an entity thinking about its continued preservation. And when you think about where the potential danger, right, explicit danger comes from, as it faces Europe at large, who has the greater potential for violence? Is it the Russians or is it the Ukrainians? Okay, now I'm not talking about covert, one-off, pinprick, terrorist bullshit, right? Like what the Ukrainians recently did in the children's college. They call it a college, but it's really more like a kind of a junior high to like high school, like 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds, right? They blew that thing up and continued to strike it. They struck this college with drones and continued to strike it time after time. You know, I think the death count now is somewhere like 24 girls. And this mirrors, you know, the first attacks that the Americans did on the Iranians. And what does that tell you? It tells you that some of this is coming from their targeting systems. And the targeting systems that they're talking about are these AIs that are making assumptions about what is the best impact that we can have, what will change the status quo the most, right? This was the same calculation that was made in Iran. You know, we recently saw the American AI gurus landing in Ukraine, and these are the same systems that they sold. We saw Palantir, right? So now these types of things are happening, and Russia recognizes it for the upgrade that it is in violence. And so now they've given a warning to Kyiv. They've given a warning to the EU. They've given a warning to the Americans. Like everybody that's got your diplomats in Kyiv, y'all need to get them the fuck out of there because the status quo has changed, and we will be striking soon. They already struck recently with the Orishniks, right? And they doubled the amount of Orishniks that had ever been used. So far, they'd only used 2. They used 2. Right? So that's already a posture change. And this is what we've been talking about on Inner City Left when we talk about the Iranification of defense postures, right? Because Russia, for a very long time, have still been practicing strategic patience. Oh, we know it's the Americans that are really giving the Ukrainians the ISR. We know it's MI6 that's really helping them plan these attacks deep inside of Russia, but we'll play along because it's too dangerous to get into a direct conflict with the United States, right? When we're talking about Kaya Kallas, as a European diplomat, she should understand the need to preserve the state and fuck what you heard. Russia can blink the fucking the EU out in a day. Now, it may or may not be mutually assured destruction because even though those are nuclear powers, like several of them, like England is a nuclear power, the UK, France is a nuclear power, you know, it doesn't matter because first off, their missile tech and delivery systems are generations behind where the Russian missile tech is. And 2, they don't have nearly the capacity that the Russians have. It is altogether possible that the Russians could first strike the EU. And the only thing they'd have backing their ass up is an Article 5 guarantee that even if America can't save them, they can avenge them. That's the hope. But that doesn't save anybody in those places, right? So when Kaya Kallas talks about we're biased against Russia, that's just not even good statecraft. The fact of the matter is you have to assure your continuance of the state. And that is not what rhetoric like that does, right? And this is why you have, you know, we're joking about it, but this is why Medvedev is making these statements. Like, for those of you who don't know and want to still live in this fantasy world where, you know, Putin is the world's greatest evil man and he's maniacal and he's crazy and he runs Russia all by himself and there's no one to answer to. There was a dude named Medvedev who was the president for a period. He was the president when Putin was not. He's far more hawkish. Now, I don't want to use terms like left or right because you can't really think about the Russians in that way. You can think about, though, what is their capacity for pushback against the empire? Putin historically has been a lawyer. He's been a negotiator. He wants to come up with treaties and, you know, give you historical lessons and whatnot. Medvedev ain't that dude. Medvedev is the wild man, you know, and the kind of person that people think Putin is as it relates to war. Medvedev is definitely that guy. And this was his latest quote was, shut your mouths. This is only the beginning. The Euro impotents are making a huge fuss over a drone hitting a residential building in Romania. Of course, it's necessary to determine whose drone it was, but in any case, all EU countries need to shut up about this. The European states are like direct participants in the war against Russia, and no one disputes that anymore, right? So, like, when you're hearing that language, they're saying they're not even gonna play the games no more. Like, oh, we should act like, oh, a drone falling off course in Romania is a big deal. When we've been reporting on Inner City Left that the Baltic countries have been allowing the Ukrainians to use drones all through their airspace, that there have been multiple hits, and there's been none of this outrage. Where was the Article 5 warning to Ukraine? Right? So, like, people like Medvedev, they're far more hawkish than Putin. And, like, when you're blowing up children's schools, like, that gets the blood of Russia up, and it makes it harder for Putin to continue to exercise this strategic patience. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. And I believe what is coming for, like, Ukraine, specifically Kyiv, it's not going to look anything like what we've seen so far in the past 3 years. I think they're about to hit them hard and without mercy. Zelensky has already fled the country, reportedly on I'm out there looking for deals and begging for money. But whenever the shit hits the fan, he's never in the state. He's never in the country, right? And that in and of itself should tell you about the seriousness of this. And the ironic thing is Medvedev, once again, it's already spoken, is like, we're not aiming for Zelensky. We're going after the decision makers, which once again goes to the point that he understands that Zelensky is not a powerful man. He's just a corrupt man. It's his job to take the money. But the people that matter, they're past playing with it. This is the Iranification, because now they're stepping up their force posture in the ways that we've seen the Iranians do. And that's relevant.
Hits keep coming. What about this? Citizens, Dmitry Medvedev, for the podcast listeners, another one. Citizens of EU countries, you should realize your authorities have unilaterally entered into a war with Russia. So be vigilant and don't be surprised by anything. The peaceful sleep is over, but you know who to ask why. So we've been hearing about a lot of things. We've been talking about people, troops coming in from Belarus. How about this? Because I don't want to just say, oh, this is that, this is that. Here is what it's like if you are living in Kyiv. How about that? Does that look like are they winning? Iskander. I'm sorry, if you can't see, it's the raw footage. But for our podcast listeners, once again, that's Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, getting hit by an Iskander. And these are not drones, okay? These are missiles. And it's becoming to a point where Kyiv cannot operate as a capital city. You cannot operate in the same ways that it did a few years ago. And, with infrastructure constantly being hit by Russia, you have to look at Ukraine as pretty much on their last legs here, which they have been for quite some time.
It's getting dangerous to a point where it's going past the point of just engaging the Ukrainians or even engaging the Europeans. We're at a point now where there's whispers in the Russian circles where they're talking about not just attacking, the infrastructure of the people that are making these weapons, right? That's what we're getting from Medvedev, but talk about using satellite killing technology. Because once again, right, we're past the point where we're even talking about, oh, this is Zelensky or, oh, this is Trump. They're like, no, this is Elon Musk. This is Starlink. And we have the power to blink that shit out of the sky. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, understanding we're not No one has even considered where we're going to be when we get to the level of war where satellites are now at war with each other, where they're under fire from munitions from the ground, right? From energy weapons from the ground, or even from attack satellites, which do exist. Americans have them. The Chinese have them. The Russians have them. There are ways to attack satellites, right? And we're in this place now where the Russians, this is how power provoked they are. This is how, right? And so, like, even though this isn't, again, something you're seeing on CNN right now, where they're downplaying it, like the Russians actually invited CNN and BBC to come to the grounds for where the college was hit, and they refused. But, these are the same people that had no problem embedding themselves with Azov neo-Nazis, right, as they invaded Russia and Kursk. Right. So it just goes back to what Kaya Kallis is saying. Their fingers have been on the scales from the beginning. Like, nobody's calling it straight. If CNN is not going to call it straight, if BBC is not going to call it straight, why would the Russians continue to act like, this is just a problem we have with the Ukrainians? They understand the levels that this proxy war has dipped to now, and they're no longer playing the cute game. They're saying literally, like Americans do, all options are on the table.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having a little bit of issues on my side. See if I can work them out.
Nah, you lovely. It's coming through.
All right. Okay. I'll just vibe out then. Let's take a look right here. Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble just getting to my slides, but I'll just take a read. I know how to read. If you can hear me, you can see me. That's all I need. This is from, let's pivot. I just want to pivot. Senior Vice President, Exxon. Neil Chapman is Senior Vice President, Exxon. That's a pretty big position right there. This is what he said in a letter to shareholders. We're approaching unheard of inventory levels. I mean, really, really low levels. You can debate whether that's going to hit those really low levels in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Once you get to that point, then you'll see prices shoot up. I mean, I dated Brent, which is a, what do they call it? Like
it's the speculative market of like what the oil is going to cost.
Right. So I think that dated Brent, most people, a model would say dated Brent will shoot up once you get to that really, really low inventory level up to 150 to 160. And I think that's per barrel, right?
Yeah.
The models would tell you that. And then when that happens is when the price gets to a certain level, demand destruction begins to bring back into a balance. Prices go so high, it becomes unaffordable. And that's what happens. And so we're at that level right now. Not later, but right now. So when we're talking about the Iran war, which it does not look like there is any situation in where the ceasefire will be extended or will be created. There's non-starters all over the place. I mean, we are seeing more agreement in Ukraine. I mean, we talked about there's no agreement between Ukraine and Russia, but there's even less. There's like more non-starters between the United States and Iran than there even is between Russia and Ukraine. And look how long that conflict has lasted. And not only look how long it's lasted, it's now being handed over. The baton is being passed into Europe. And the United States is willing to risk pretty much everything they can and waste their entire European hand on Ukraine, which they don't even care that much about. So when it comes to Iran and their work, it's obviously going to take a long time. And, the narrative of, Iran having to give up Lebanon, or not include Lebanon in some sort of peace negotiation, that's not just a non-starter. So you see the gas prices, you see the things going on. Where are we with the Iran conflict? I know that Kuwait was hit. That was a retaliatory strike. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings?
I mean, it's just about to get back on in every real way. And this is what we've been talking about. When we're talking about, Brent prices going to $153 to $200, I feel like that's still conservative. I think it's going to get worse than that because The strategic reserve is what he's been talking about. And we've been warning you about that in Inner City Lift for weeks. Like, they have artificially kept the price of gasoline relatively reasonable, even though the prices have went up, right? It should actually be up way worse because we're now 5 to 6 weeks into a disruption of 20 to 30% of the global oil petroleum, right? So like there's only so long you can dip. This is like going into the national savings bank for oil. When that runs low, it truly is market, right? And that can't be counteracted, right? This is why the Iranians understand they have the time on their side, right? All of this pause, this is just so that the Americans, all of the forces can get back to the force posture that they feel comfortable with to prepare to get back into this. Because as you said, all of the points that we've been offered are irreconcilable, far more than the Russian-Ukrainian situation, right? We have Iranian MPs saying things like the three-point plan. One, we seize concessions not through dialogue, okay, but with missiles. In negotiations, we merely make them understand. That's a hell of a thing to say. Point two, we have no trust in guarantees or words. Only actions are the measure. Not action. No action will be taken before the other side acts, right? So that's them saying no. No matter what your president is telling you, we're not we're not opening up the Straits of Hormuz. If you want to come in here, we're going to fight you tooth and nail. And the third thing he said is the winner of any agreement is the one who is better prepared for war from the day after. Does this sound like reconciliation? Not at all. You have the Israelis that are pressing the Americans, the Iranian lead negotiators. Like, everybody understands this is just a pause. It's not a ceasefire. It is a very brief pause because this conflict is existential for several nations. It's existential for Israel. They can't let this go. This is now existential for the Gulf nations. Like we're talking about most of their food comes in through the Strait of Hormuz. Most of it goes out. They're able to get some resources, trafficking through the desert of Saudi Arabia and connecting back up through Syria, and going out to Turkey or going through into Egypt. But that is much slower and much dangerous. I mean, it's the freaking summer, man. Nobody wants to be driving through the desert, okay, with a truck of food. No one wants to do that. That's not tenable. Most of the resources that come into these Gulf nations come through the Strait of Hormuz. The fact that that's unresolved, this is hurting all of those countries. It has to be resolved, right? Israel can't let this go because the Greater Israel Project is just getting started. To them, they're like, this is what we have been pressuring all of these American politicians for years for. This is our moment. We will never get another moment after this because after this, America's going to have to buckle down and get ready or with Russia and or with China. And they will not have time to be preoccupied with Iran. So for the United States, now or never. This is their last chance.
Yeah.
And the Americans can't lose their hegemony.
Yeah.
You can't keep being the bully if people can say no to you. And right now Iran is saying, nah, I don't think I will.
Yeah. And they have
I'm just gonna stay.
Yeah, we stay. My screen is still all over the place. So I'm going to just keep rocking whatever look or vibe that we're in because, I think it's important sort of to acknowledge that, there was some time, where we were discussing all the different Arab states. And I know we were talking a lot about Oman and Oman sort of being bullied or, trying to be brought into this, war in another way. And sort of they've had the ability and wherewithal to just kind of take a step back and be like, no, I don't think we're going to be bullied by the United States. And I wonder if, there isn't, Iran right there in other countries, pushing back more and more sort of against American regional hegemony. that kind of CENTCOM hegemony that they're looking for. And also I just think it's beautiful that Iran is having solidarity with Hezbollah, and they remember the times where, Hezbollah was a huge part of, their own movement. And I think they were paying that in real solidarity. And, that's just the nature of resistance groups. And that's the nature of what we're trying to do. And, what I think is important, and this is why liberalism is not going to help us and is not going to save us. For me, I think we witnessed this Russia-Ukraine war now for several months or several years. I'm sorry, and now this conflict is going to be altering bringing on the multipolarity that we want to see. I wanted to get to, if we can, or were you about to say something?
You talked about Oman, and I think that's a great example. Oman, it goes back to why we were saying, right? This is existential for the Americans as hegemons. If Iran can tell you no, survive, anyone can tell you no, So just this week they made the film who there are rumors that Pete Hegseth had on a phone call and to that country they've tried to have peace with the Americans, right? They were the ones that were the original ones that were holding the mediation talks between Iran and right? And you're threatening to kill us. You're we just have to. That's an incredible statement. That's an incredible place. And so, like earlier this week, they massively expanded trade and economic ties with Iran because Iran saying, and we're going to say we'll have problems. So let's say it's a environmental regulation process. We'll spend the money. I'm just saying, do what we say. Normalize relations with Israel. Need to give what we say.
Yeah. You lost me there for a second. Can you hear me at all? Hey, we experiencing some issues. You know how it goes. Technical issues, always an issue.
No, we good. My bad.
Good? Okay.
Yeah,
No, is it on? Yeah. No, I can hear you perfectly now.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let's just pivot real quick. I don't know how much, we want to get into this, but I just wanted to mention a little bit about Bolivia because there's a lot of, I talked about sort of resistance fighting with Iran and Hezbollah and how important that is for us to see things like that because that's the way to move forward in our own resistance life. Neoliberal resistance is never going to be it. But, racist white people say things all the time. And I remember we were talking about a friend of ours, I think I'll just say Matt Cedillo, good friend of ours, who, we were doing a workshop and one of the people there, just said something incredibly racist about indigenous people, and it's just interesting to me now that in Bolivia, many of those indigenous communities there are protecting Evo Morales and pushing back sort of against the right-wing puppet government there in Bolivia. I remember we were very upset when they won, and I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on Bolivia right now because I know Bolivia is like both very close to our hearts and, just any information you can kind of give us about that situation.
Yeah, so, again, this is one of the places that recently had an American puppet kind of installed against the will of the people, and this is a place that, right now what they're doing is they're preparing themselves to be besieged, right? They just received huge plane loads of humanitarian assistance, right? The government did. But remember, the government is who the Bolivian people are protesting against right now. So again, the scuttlebutt is what they received is an ass load of tear gas, and non-lethal armaments, and up to and including who knows what, right? And so what the Bolivian people have been doing is not militarily opposing, but they've been shutting down the economy by having huge blockades all around the big cities, right, that are making commerce impossible. It's like, we are not gonna, the spice will not flow until this dude gets out of here. Now, again, we'll see how this goes, because it's unlikely to play out in a non-violent way. I think we're just getting to the beginning of something very ugly, and it could be up to and including a civil war there. But again, the Americans back the government, and the government has the military. So that's always a scary position, But at the same time, you have the body of people in Bolivia who are overwhelmingly resisting and protesting against this person. And we're going to see what that turns into. But I think that we're looking for continued devolution. I think that it's going to spiral and get much worse before it gets better. And it is a sad thing. My heart weeps weeps for these people. But again, these are the real ways where Brazil is failing in their leadership role. This goes to when everybody's like, oh, you're just against social democracy. And I'm like, yes, because they're all little skinny, whiny bitches. Like, whatever you think about Mom Donnie, Lula is far to the left of him. And yet every time it comes to showing some muscle and being like, nah, this is my area. I'm going to take care of this. I am the big country. I'm the big dog down here. That's not what happens at all. They bow down and they allow the Americans to do whatever. And it's shocking because Lula is a person that has been imprisoned by these people, right? He has been defrauded of elections. Like, everything they claim about Trump actually really happened to Lula. He was cheated out of an election. He was forced to go to jail for things that he did not do, and then he comes back and he's just this feckless, meek dude who never steps up. And we're talking about Bolivia. But again, when you're looking at South America, right, it's on Brazil to be the anchor. To say, no, I'm not going to brook any interference down here. We're not going to allow any extra judicial or extra governmental agencies to operate down here. We ensure the security of South America. Brazil has not stepped into that role, and as a leader in BRICS, really the obligation is on them. But they've continued to, once again, try to act like, if we don't draw their attention, they won't notice us, we don't, we just want to show that we're not the scary communists, we just believe in some social reforms. They're not going to allow any of that shit. Anything that shows a better standard of living than the American standard right now is a threat to the American standard. Because we're in a place where all of this stuff is global. People can see how all of these people are living. This is ultimately the real problem with Cuba. You can't go to a place that's a communist place and have better health care, better standard of living, able to not be indebted to these banks for 50 years of your life, kicked out and homeless, right? So why ultimately are they not going to let Bolivia go? The reason you can know that they're not going to let Bolivia go is because they have huge lithium mining capacity. And America continues to try to exert its rare earth dominance. Now, again, the foolhardy nature of all of this is Americans still can't even process them. They will conquer this country and destroy them for no reason other than they have a resource they want. And then they'll still have to send all of this stuff to China to have it refined anyway, because America doesn't have the capacity to do the real rare earth mining refinement process. But they have no problem at all taking these resources. And then it'll be the conservatives on the TVs talking about, why are these people trying to immigrate to the United States? Because you stole their national resource that would allow these people to live in dignity, live in a competitive and compelling way. Because lithium is the new petroleum. There's no reason why Bolivia should not be turning into the new Saudi Arabia as far as wealth of a nation.
Did you already mention we'll cool whoever we want? I
didn't, but there it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it just goes to. This is something that...
And that's who he was talking about.
Yeah,
Bolivia.
Exactly. And and about Evo Morales specifically, who they
targeted. None of that has changed.
Yeah. The things still happen. And, again, it just goes back to, like, what it means to have a Nicolas Maduro or what it means to have an Evo Morales. And, I'm a big fan of Claudia Sheinbaum, even though I know she still has to kind of exist more with the United States. But this is why we show love to the leaders that we like. And Lula, he's become, far more liberal and far less, militaristic. And that's just what happens when you get older sometimes. And, it has to go to sort of the transfer of power. And again, he's fighting a lot in terms of sort of the Trump doctrine now, that, the Monroe Doctrine 2.0 kind of feeling that they have, I think this is...
Lula's the guy that thinks he can always talk the mugger down. That's who Lula is.
Yeah.
Come on, guy. Come on. I've got plenty of money. I got money for me. I got money for you. We don't have to do it.
It goes back to the fear. I think that's the problem. And that's the issue. And you have to be able to stand up. And, the United States, they work through fear. I know we were just talking about Ecuador and me and you personally, and I'm not here, but, Ecuador is experiencing a lot of incredible police violence, kidnappings, murders, that are very Duarte in nature. You have Guatemala just being forced to allow U.S. strikes on their territory simply because, for the idea of drug cartels and such. We still have Caribbean fishermen getting killed. You mentioned that to me a while ago, and I've been trying to pay attention as much as I can. But still 2 fishermen killed in the Caribbean. Not to mention the aforementioned Mexico dealing with their own CIA infiltration and wondering what is going on and the infiltration that the United States has all over Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins right behind me, as you see. Link in the description. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. Guys, I think we're going to have some merch coming soon. I'm excited about that. It's been something I've been wanting to do. So we appreciate everyone's support, but also we're going to, I think we're going to have shirts like this. Sure. Like, hey, if you want to rep Inner City Left, but also some cool fashion things. You guys know I'm a big, or at least maybe some people who know me know I'm a big fashion person. So hopefully we'll have some merch soon. Tanky, what did we forget? Final thoughts.
Man, prepare yourselves, because we're fastly approaching the place where we're not going to be able to continue to deny the urgency of the moment that we're in. By the time you see our next broadcast, we may already be in that place, because the world is waiting to see what the Americans and the Israelis are about to do in Iran. They'll probably use this weekend to do it. And there's a strong indication that there will be an expansive Russian retaliation for the things that they have experienced or feel like they have experienced. And with both of those things hanging in the wind, the capacity for violence is literally incalculable.
Yeah. Scary times we're living in. Hold your loved ones close. For Amoja Little Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. And of course, I say this with a full and hearty heart. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.